Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Saturday. This might turn that down a bit. That's a bit better. Not in the spotlight. Hello, how you going? Exciting. Saturday. You're living your life by design. Downloads coming through. Fantastic. Just going to find myself here if I can. So we've got a new phone computer thing going on, so I'm hoping it's all going to be seamless because we now have the best phone on the market, according to Dean. So yeah, the best download with the best, our best phone with the best amount of download, or not download, whatever it's called. Unlimited. So yes, we can just do whatever we want now, go as big and expand as big as we like. So yeah, it's going to be amazing. But obviously in the meantime, when you get a new phone, there's so much technology stuff to get updated and whatnot. There I am. Hooray. So I'm feeling a little bit like I need a hot chocolate today. So that's what I have. Hope you got yourself a nice cup of tea or a hot chocolate. Excellent. Alrighty, so yes, hopefully you guys have got the message to jump on today. I know Saturdays are a busy day, but yeah, this is all coming through. I'm really excited about today actually, because there's so much to tell you, so much to update you on, and to me, it's really, I guess, a really living example of living your life by design, and this whole process of, I guess, why it's so important that you guys have committed to this process, and committed to being supported through this process, because it really is this experience oftentimes of ups and downs and feeling a bit lost in the quagmire and really wondering what the hell you're doing at times. So sometimes it's like you're really on and really in flow and it's all really coming through and it's really clear, whereas at other times it's not at all like that, and it can be really disconcerting or disheartening or whatever when you're in, so that you've got the ebbs and then the flows. Yep. And so when you're in an ebb, it can feel really disconcerting, not really sure what's happening. And they're really good times to come back and regroup. And so, I guess if you're tracking along with the order and sequence of the program, and you're committing and applying the things that we're talking about, and we're going to talk a bit about that today, that, if you're going through that process, then I guess from where I'm sitting and what I'm observing, that, the last little while has really been about being in an ebb, and really then what's important is to stop and regroup. And I guess one of the biggest take-home messages from today, which I'd really like to impart, is that at this moment in time, if you haven't already, is to stop and to look back, because we've got, what is it now, maybe 8 months or so of content there and processes, which are all there designed to be able to help you to dig deep, explore, excavate, uncover the blocks, limitations, barriers, clear and clean them away, as well as then to come and regroup. Because that's the exciting thing, is when we're actually living this as a living practice, what we get to do from time to time is to stop and reflect. And with all of what you have now, that is an amazing, I consider it a library, an amazing library of resources that are available to you, that if you're at a place where it's an ebb, and you're feeling a bit stuck and you're questioning the results that you're getting and you're wanting to do some reflection, then it's probably a good idea to go back and have a look at what's already there, and then look at what jumps out at you. Yeah, and today's content today is really born out of that for me. And so what would be a really good idea at this point in time is to go back and have a look and see what jumps out at you. Yeah, because when you do that, you're sort of just going with what is most relevant to you, and what is probably what you're most needing at the moment. Yep. And so it's that idea of really giving yourself what you need at a time when you need it. Yep. And so, I guess there's an option when you're in an ebb, two options. One, which is to feel really bad about it, to get stuck, to recognize that things aren't necessarily working for you in the way that you want them to. And this might be in one area, it might be in two areas, it might be in all areas, and it might be only little bits in some areas, so just really checking in where you're at. But your options really, as far as I can see it, are fairly binary, and, let's just keep things simple, where you can look at it and see your results and then feel really bad about it, and then have that reinforce old ways of being in the world. So, you can look at it and say, okay, well, it's not working, I'm not getting the results. Then somehow either you're undeserving, unworthy, incompetent, incapable, all this sort of stuff, not cut out for it or whatever, that negative self-talk. Or you can go back to the drawing board and go, okay, what's happening here? What specifically is not working? And what is it that you can do about it? Because that is the growth mindset. That there is what allows you to live. And my deep belief with living your life by design is that you will go through moments of that time and time again, because we are conscious creators of the life that you want to live. My belief is the life that you were born to live, and that you then get this experience of ever increasing growth, right? And so when you do that, growth is not linear, it's organic. Yeah. So it's sort of, there's a stem there, there's a stem there. Oh, there's a bit of a funky sort of looking leaf there. That's a bit funny. We'll just go with that then. And so, it's not this, linear process where you go from A to B to C to D. Yeah. That we go, from A to B and back to A and a half, if there is such a thing, then we go through this process like that. Yeah. And so when you can appreciate that that is what growth looks like, there doesn't have to be any meaning behind it, that is what growth looks like. And when you get back into that growth mindset, what we come back to is, what do you need to best support yourself right now? What is it that you need to be able to bust through whatever it is that's blocking you, that inner glass ceiling that so many of us hit and then go back down to being small again, yeah, and hit it and go back down to being small again. And what my deep desire is for you guys is to be able to, yes, definitely hit those inner glass ceilings, because that says you're green and growing. Yeah. So we want to be hitting those inner glass ceilings, but we want to be busting through them. And I always think of that, I don't even know if it's in the book. I haven't read the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book. But in the movie, at least, they have Gene Wilder and the little boy go into the glass elevator, or the elevator, and then they bust through the glass roof, and they bust out, and then they're flying, right? And so that's my image, where you go, yes, the glass ceiling is there, and it's what's contained you, and it's allowed your life to be how it is, but to then recognize that it's a limitation, but it doesn't have to be an ongoing limitation. Yes, it's a limitation for now, but it doesn't have to be an ongoing limitation. And that is something that I know to be true for each and every one of us here. Yeah. And so this is in some ways a little pep talk to say, well, actually, if that's what you're doing, like if you're out there kicking goals and smashing it, then fabulous. But be aware that we have these cycles, and that, that because it's happening, if you're really kicking goals right now, fabulous, let's celebrate that. But if that's not you, and you're kind of looking at your results going, what is going on here? That is a fabulous question. Yeah, what is going on here is so much more of a powerful question than, what was I thinking? So what is going on here? What's wrong with me? Is what I was thinking. What is going on here versus what's wrong with me? Yeah. So because that is so often the default position where we go to look inside and look for personal attribution of responsibility. We think that when we can attribute that responsibility personally, that somehow empowers us, but it doesn't, because rarely is the problem you personally. It's, and even if it is, what can you do about it? Like, really, when we look at our character, that is something that usually is fixed. There's certainly skills we can develop, there's certainly things we can learn, but they are all the what's. So if it's a skill you can develop, excellent. What can I do about it? Well, I can do a course, or I can do, I can start to meditate, or I can do my journal more often, or I can exercise. They're all the what's. Yeah, so, and things that we can develop, and they're much more useful to look at. Anyway, so that's a little bit of a summary of what we're going to talk about, but I'd really like to, for us all to arrive in this process. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is, you've taken this time aside for yourself, and we just really want to honour and respect the fact that you're taking this time for yourself. And so I'd just like you to get comfortable, and we are just going to just enter into today's live stream, and we're going to enter into the process. So I'd just like you to close your eyes and just turn your attention inward. And if you're happy to, just place your hand on your heart, and just noticing the gentle rise and fall of your breath. We're just arriving here in this process. We're just arriving and acknowledging yourself for making the space and room and time to be here. That this is a special, sacred time. Time is the most valuable thing that you can give yourself. And we're just wanting to acknowledge you for being here, making this space to grow and to learn. And we just want to open up and ask that you get whatever it is that you're needing out of today's live stream. And so I want you to draw to mind an intention, a need, a desire that you'd really like to focus on for today's live stream. And just drawing that to mind. What is it that you most need to get out of today's session? And just holding that in your mind and holding that in your heart. And we'll set the intention that together, that you can find your way to answering this question, intention, or problem today. And so you're going to allow yourself to arrive into the process, arrive into the session. And just noticing that you can just start to slow your rate of breathing. And just reminding yourself to relax and to open up. You are here. You are here for a purpose. And just to open up. And we do this by relaxing and calming. Okay, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. It's really funny watching myself on the video. I always laugh about some of the faces that come out with these, when they have the little snapshot. I'm like, oh my God, do I really look like that? Oh dear, like the worst photo in the whole wide world. But anyway, you have to move past that and accept that that's how it's going to be at times. Anyway, I'm so excited about today because to me, from my perspective, the content for today has literally been percolating for about 6 weeks since the last, so the clearing and the cleaning and the clearing, and that was, that was then. Last session we did that, and then ever since then, that focus on cleaning and clearing, and then just really coming to this point where this stuff has just been percolating to come to the top. So it's sort of like, without being too gross about it, it's sort of like the baby has been born, and this is the newborn baby that's arrived today, but it's all clean and it's not bloodied anymore. It's all clean and tidied just for you, so you can be thankful for that. As am I. Okie dokie. Oh gosh, hang on, where have I put my notes? Awesome. So today, what we're going to be focusing on are the rules. Yeah. And so if you don't quite know what that means just yet, that's okay, because we'll talk about it. But when we look at our life, it can be a useful metaphor to start to think of life as a game. Yeah. And when we think of life as being a game, then we can start to question the rules of that game. Yeah. And I have a funny little story to tell you about whether or not your family has ever played board games, and specifically Monopoly. Yeah, that it is, I think, one of probably the worst family games that you could ever play in a family, unless you want to have family conflict and bickering and fighting and throwing game boards or whatever it is, not that we've ever done that, but like Monopoly is just one of those games that tends to drive people crazy, and one person ends up being really happy and everybody else ends up being really miserable. So like, why would you do that to yourself? But anyway, we have played historically Monopoly in our family. We don't anymore, I think, after this game, actually, surprisingly. Anyway, so Monopoly, right? And when you play a game that everybody has, yes, there's the rules that are written, and yet then people interpret their own rules. So it's sort of like, when you go to free parking, or, so do you get the money from free parking, or, there's all these little nuances, I guess, of how people play Monopoly, right? And most families will have them. And because we are a blended family, that these rules are not always agreed upon. So it's like, we've always played it like this, and we've already played it like this, and so be it. So anyway, so I had recently come back from it was called Billionaire Boot Camp, right? So I'd come back from a business training, and so I had next leveled my business mindset, right? And so I'm playing Monopoly with this sort of next level billionaire mindset, right? And I've come back, and you'd think with that I'd be winning, but I wasn't, right? And so I could see, that my ship was sinking, and so my ship was sinking, and I realized this early enough where I had enough cash that I could actually start to negotiate, right? And so I've totally gone off script, never played it like this before in my life, and I start bargaining with I think it was my stepbrother, and he's quite a bit younger than I am, so he's somewhat easily influenced. And so I've got him, and I'm like, hey, we're both kind of losing here, but if we joined forces, then we could totally, I think it was my stepdad that was winning, and that's really important in our family, that he should win, because that's important. Anyway, so I'm aligning with my stepbrother, going, we're both losing. We can either both lose and we know who's going to win, or we can form an alliance and we can both win together. So united we stand, otherwise separate we fall, right? And he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so we're just bargaining over here, and I could just see steam coming out of my stepdad's ears, right? And he's just like not having it. He goes, that is not in the rules. That is not in the rules. And you can't do that. And I'm like, well, actually, if you read the rules, it's not in the rules that I can't do it. Yep, these are the rules, that you play by, but it's not in the rules. It doesn't say you cannot form an alliance with another person. That is not in the rules, right, at all. And in fact, when you actually, from my perspective, because I'd up-leveled my business mindset, I realized that actually business is all about relationships. Business is all about alliances, in fact, and that this is how effective business is done. And it was so obvious to me coming back that if you're kind of a small fish, then what you do is form alliances, right? And together then, and not to rise up to, stone the mighty Goliath. No, that's not about that. It's just creating what we call this blue ocean strategy, right? This new ocean where we cooperate and we can all win. And I was like, this is genius. How come I've never thought of this before? And so only because I'd up-leveled my mindset, right? And so I did this, and in the end, it just collapsed the game. Like, no, we were like, we're going to win. And so then ultimately, others refused to play because they realised the genius behind the strategy and that they had no chance. They had no chance against us. And so because they'd never thought of playing it like that before, I'd never thought of playing it like that before, but it was just so funny because it was just such an inconvenient truth, that it's not in the rules that I can't do it. So therefore, I can do it, right? That's my thinking. And so this is, and I encourage you to think about how this applies to you, right? How does this apply to you in your life? Yep. So when we look at the rules that we play by, yeah, we think we're playing, yes, we're playing by the rules and we're doing what we think we should. So how do you know you're playing by a rule? Is because you're doing the should, ought to, must do, have to's. Yeah, all of that necessity thinking, yeah, is when you are operating from a rule or when a rule is in operation. And so you're following those rules, but, it's not actually written in those rules that other rules don't exist, that just because it says you have to do this doesn't mean you can't do something else, right? You can't start to think outside the box. So, for example, in Monopoly, we've got the rules, but it doesn't say that I can't form an alliance. Therefore, presumably, that means that I can. Yeah, and it was really effective. We were going to win, right? And so why wouldn't we? Well, other people were unhappy about it. Other people didn't like it because they'd never thought of it themselves and they knew that it was effective, it was going to work. Yeah. And so, there's multiple layers in there in terms of what you potentially could get out of that story. And I'd encourage you to have a think about that, So as you start to play by different rules, you potentially could start to question who's not going to like it. You're thinking, and what you are doing, and what I sincerely hope that you're doing, is you are also upgrading your thinking in this program. Like, that is ultimately at its core what we're doing. We're upgrading, next leveling your thinking to think outside the box, so you're not thinking like the average person, because living your life by design is where you cease to become average. You cease to become someone who is just living an ordinary life, following the rules of society that you've been given, right? That is my deep desire for you guys. And the only way we do that is to question the existing rules, and we're going to do that today. Question the existing rules, and to then start to think about, well, these are potentially other rules that are there that you can begin to play by, that just because you haven't thought of them before doesn't mean that they're not there. And just because you've got these rules doesn't mean that you can't do that, right? And so there's no rule that says, well, potentially there's no rule, and if there is, we need to change it. But there's no rule that says other rules don't exist, or other rules can't exist, or you should not consider other rules. And so this is where we start to get, we play fast and loose really with our own conditioning and our own rules. And obviously, let's make a difference or a distinction between morals and values and rules. Yeah, because most people confuse the two, is the reality. Most people confuse rules, this is what, I should do, with values, which is what I deeply desire on a heart and soul level to be and do and have an experience in the world. So for me, integrity is a value, not a rule. So for me, when actually, just as a little confession time, the other day I received a whole bunch of products and there was some missing. And one of the things that was missing was in a package, so it comes together, but I got one part of the package but not the other. And in my mindset, I'm like, oh, well, I probably could say, well, I didn't get the package, when really I got half the package. But I was like, well, actually, that's totally out of alignment with my integrity. That's my little naughty child going, oh, can I get a bargain? But effectively, when you look at it, that's stealing, right? Or lying. And I'm like, that is totally not within my integrity to do that. That's like my naughty child going, hee, can I get a bargain? You know, like, no, you know, not in this, not when it comes, if I'm honest and I say, look, I got this half of the bundle, but not that half. And they go, oh, here, I'll just give you the bundle. Fantastic score, you know, total integrity, total honesty, and a bonus given to me. As it happens, that didn't happen, but you know, whatever. I still feel like I've acted within my integrity, right? And so that's a value. And so that's not something that I will compromise on. Whereas should would be, oh, I should tell the truth, you know, and I should always do what I'm told. Yeah, I should always do what I'm told. I should always do things that please others. I should never put anybody else out. You know, that they're shoulds, they're rules, yeah? And when we operate from shoulds, you know, there might be some deeper truth in there, but we want to get to the deeper truth, because when you operate from values, what we're doing is from our core, yeah, it's an empowered decision-making process where you're doing it from your core, and it feels aligned and it feels good to do, right? Whereas if you're doing it from a should, it comes with a sense of obligation, burden. It's de-energizing, depleting, and it's just really not how we want to operate, not how I want you guys to operate in your life, increasingly so, you know. So obviously, the more you unpack them, the more you unfold them, the more you realize that we're always operating from rules. And so we want to recognize that the rules that are getting in the way, rules in themselves aren't bad, but following them blindly without conscious decision making definitely is, yeah, because you don't know then if this is a rule that serves you. And typically you will know that it's a rule that doesn't serve you because of the results that you're getting in your life. Yeah, so if you're following a rule, and I'm going to share one with you in a minute, if you're following a rule that then means that you close down opportunities, close down your own growth, then you're not going to get the results that you want, and you're going to be working really, really hard and getting not the results that you want, right? And so my rule, or my recent, I guess, uncovering is probably another way of putting it, and you may or may not have been have heard this particular live stream, but I was recently talking about my business coach, right? So since I started online, I've had a business coach, and I've always felt a sense of incongruence in some ways, where I'm filtering out what works for me as a healer and as a health professional and someone who's heart-based, right? That's for me, and operates from integrity. And not saying that she doesn't operate from integrity, because I wouldn't followed her and, you know, learnt from her otherwise. But there are some things that she does which are much more internet marketing based and much more sales based, and that's not a bad thing, but the way she does it I just never felt completely comfortable with. But what I was doing was filtering in the good bits and filtering out the bits that didn't fit, right? And so what that is for me is a belief, yeah, that I have to compromise, yeah, and where that comes from is this sense of what I now call, or what I've always called, but in this scenario I didn't realise it was playing out, right, was this misguided loyalty, which comes from a rule which says, you know, once I've made a commitment to someone, then I should, that should be how it is, you know, that shouldn't change. You know, once I'm committed to someone, then that shouldn't change, you know, that shouldn't update, you know, because I'm loyal, you know, right? And so, you know, that has really not served me at all well, right? And so, you know, when it's reciprocated, then, you know, I had at a dinner last night with friends that I've had for 30 years, right? So we're sitting down and we're like, you know, our kids are now, you know, hanging out together, and we're like, you know, when we were your age, like we'd just met, you know, and we've known each other for 30 years. And so, and, you know, one I've known for longer, you know. And so when you have friends like that, the loyalty is obviously, pays dividends there, don't have the fly-by-night sort of friends. And, I've got, lots of friends that I've known for decades and love deeply. But then when I apply that same strategy to someone who I've just met, then I find obviously that it may or may not serve me. Absolutely it can, but that then is depending on the quality of the person or the character of the person. And so in this scenario, as I've been reflecting on it, I realised actually that the rule, that once I'm committed, I'm in, and that doesn't change. I shouldn't change my mind. I should remain committed. Yeah. Was actually not serving me. So what it was doing meant that I was remaining with someone who I felt an incongruence with, and that itself is a belief, that I can't have it all. Yep, that I have to compromise. In relationships, I have to compromise. Yep, so there's another rule. Yep, without realising it. Yep. And so as I started to reflect on it, I'm like, why am I doing this filtering? Why am I doing that? Why do I have to do that? She's not the full package for me. There's good stuff, but there's not good stuff too. And why do I have to do that? Well, actually, I don't. Yeah. So when I caught the rule, I have to compromise in relationships. And when I question that misguided loyalty, I shouldn't change my mind. I should remain committed. When I questioned that, I was like, wow, how limiting is that? Yeah, how limiting is that? And, and I guess, for me, in the last 12 months, I can feel really grateful around the support and guidance that I've had, because I've grown my business to be, what it is now. And I'm really proud of that. And certainly without that guidance, I wouldn't be where I am now. However, if I had not have had that rule, which, can't change the past, but now that maybe a better way of putting it, now I've recognised that rule, what I did just like that, next day, I found a business coach who is completely aligned. Yep. And heart-based, she has spent the last 5 years doing exactly what I was trying to do. Why do I have to reinvent the wheel? That she spent the last 5 years filtering out, doing what I was trying to do, all of the bull crap, in the internet marketing world, and adapting it to healers, health professionals, creatives, sensitives, sensitive people, empathetic people, like me. So I'm like, wow, you've done all the work for me. Thank you. I didn't want to have to do it because it's just painful. It's just horrible. A lot of it's really horrible. And so, and I don't want to put that through to my community. So I'm filtering it out. But why would I have to do that if I could just change the rule? And the minute I changed the rule, I need a new business coach. Obvious. It's been obvious for the last 6 months, but sometimes these things take a little while to percolate and come up. So if that's you, then totally with you on that. And so sometimes they do take a little while. Like I journal every day, I meditate for an hour at least a day. I've got all these practices, but these rules run really deep, right? And it's really can be very difficult to recognize them when they're in operation, and that's where the daily practices are essential. Because they do take a while to surface, even when you are doing all the practices. And so as soon as I recognized that rule, instantly I said, I need a new business coach, and I found her the next day, and I've just signed her up yesterday, or maybe she signed me up, however it works. I believe we're soul aligned and we found each other, so it's a win-win. And so I'm super excited about the work we're going to do together, and that will obviously flow through to you guys, but it's just totally next level, because for me there is no filtering. What she does is heart-based, what she does is with full integrity, and I feel totally aligned with her, and I know that she can take my business to that next level, right? And so by changing that rule, I can then open up to what it is that I need. Yeah. Open up to what it is that then means that my life continues to be that by design. Yeah. And so this is what I encourage you to have a think about. How does this story apply to you in your life and in your change? Yeah. So it may not be in the area of business, it might be in another area, but just question, how does that story apply to you? In how many ways does that story apply to you? Yeah, because, you know, at its essence, you know, we are all the same. We all operate from these rules. They all limit us, and the minute we recognize them, that's the second we can actually change how we operate in the world. I'm like, why would I have to remain loyal? Like, that's ridiculous. There's nothing coming back here. Why would I have to do that? Like, that's a ridiculous rule. That I have to compromise in relationships. Wow, like, that's incredible that is still there. You know, like, that's how I found Dean, you know, because I was like, I'm not compromising in relationships anymore, you know, that's it, I'm not doing it. And then I found Dean, right? And so, and it's perfect, you know, like, not that our relationship's perfect, but, you know, we are perfectly matched, you know. And so, you know, because I decided I wasn't going to do that, but yet there it rears its head again, you know, and that's, you know, something then that gets to be upgraded and released once again. So, you know, these things can be cyclical and are cyclical, and that's okay too. But it's just about recognizing it and being conscious and recognizing, you know, day by day, you know, that this is a growth, it's an evolution, and it's a process, and really give yourself space and room and honor yourself for being on this journey, because, yeah, it's not always an easy one, yeah, especially if you're in an ebb, yeah. So that's that. So what I'm going to do is I've got a bunch of questions, and I'm just going to read them out, and then I'm going to, so that you know what we're going to be doing, and then I'm just going to put them in a PDF on the website so that you can spend some time journaling on them, because to me, as I say, they're not always immediately obvious, and sometimes you need to ask these questions on repeat to really start to excavate, you know, because when we get our head around those rules, so say for example, you look at the rules of Monopoly, yeah, you got them all written down there, right? So this is the same. If we're looking at the game of life that we're playing, and you might choose, just for starters, when you look at your Life by Design plan, to look at the area that you're focusing on. Yeah, so choose an area and just look at the rules within that particular area, because, you know, there's so much there, you don't want to get overwhelmed. So let's just, you know, use the power of your focus and really then drill down using these questions. Okay, so what we're going to do is just to choose the domain, yeah, and then I want you to write down in that domain, what do you expect of yourself? Yeah, so I expect that I will. Yeah, I expect that I will. So say, for example, it's health. I expect that I will blah, 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 blah. You know, so I expect that I'll exercise every day. I'll expect that I will never miss, you know, a day of exercise. It might be a bit repetitive. I expect that I will hold myself to a high standard. I'll expect that I'll push myself every single day. I expect. Yeah. So that's one thing. So we're drawing out your expectations that you have of yourself. Yep. And then we're going to go and into the shoulds. Yep. And so all that is, you know, in that particular area, yeah, I should. Yeah. You know, so in the area of health, I should always eat right. You know, eat right. You know, that's very vague, but, you know, oftentimes these rules are vague, and that's why they're unhelpful. Yeah. So we're going to go through. So I expect that, and then I should. You know, so you're going through in relationships. I should always be loyal. I should always show up 100%. I should always give more than I get. Oh, that's an interesting one. Flick that one out of there. You know, so we go through and we uncover. Yep. So, and just through, just finishing that sentence, I expect that I will, and I should. Yeah. And so playing around with those and just getting them out. And like, you know, like for me, you know, I should, always give more than I get, you know, like, oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting rule, yeah? And so to start to uncover those things that may not be working for you, and not that they all will be unhelpful, but we want to obviously identify the unhelpful ones. So that's what I want you to do there. And so we're just going to question, you know, how is that working for you? How is it working for you? I have to read my own writing now. Oh, okay. So how's that working for you? Yeah. So then we're looking at the results. So when we're looking at the game of life that you're playing, the rules that you're following, we want to then look at how is that working for you. When you look at the rules, what are your results? Because they're correlated. You know, this is not an accident. things that co-occur are often not causal. Well, actually, in this scenario, that co-occurrence is causality. Yeah. So our beliefs, our rules, our model of the world absolutely cause our results, whether or not we realize it. Yeah. It seems random. How am I in a relationship like this again? How weird. Oh, random. No, not random. Not at all. So. So obviously how I got in, previous relationships where that was happening, and then all of a sudden now it's in my business relationships. How weird's that? Is that random? No, it's not. It's my model of the world playing out again on repeat. I just get to realize it and get to release it. Yep. And so we want to look at that. How is that working for you? When you look at the rules, how does that correlate with the results that you're getting? In how many ways? Yeah, so we could ask that as a question. In how many ways has that limited you? Or in how many ways is that limiting you? Yep, really, really important that we're looking at the potential for those rules to be impacting your results negatively. Yep. Okay. So what I'd like you to do at that point is when we're looking at just digging a little bit deeper. So if you see that actually these rules are working for you, and what I'd like you to do when you're looking at the rules is not only look at the external results, but as always, I want you to look at your internal results as well. Yeah. So when you're looking at your results, yes, you might be out there kicking goals, but does it come at the sacrifice to yourself? And this is such a big one for me because I'm such a doer, but I'm always having to check in with myself to go, actually, is this aligned? And is this actually good for me? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. Okay. Have had to learn that lesson on repeat. So what I'd like you to do is, are you getting the results that you want, both external and internal? Yeah, because if it's coming at the compromise or the sacrifice of yourself, then it's not worth it. Hey, how you going? I can't quite see who's that. That's Jade. Oh, hey Jade, how you going? Couldn't quite see the little icon. That's a new feature. So what we're wanting to do is to just check in. We're just talking about the rules. So just to give you a bit of a recap, but go back and watch the replay because there's a lot in what we've already talked about. But thank you for jumping on. Welcome. And so we're just wanting to then check in with the how's that working for you on those two levels. So when the rule is in operation, yes, are you getting external results? Tick. But are you getting the internal results too? So do you feel energized, alive, excited, enthusiastic, or not? Because these are our internal cues. These are the things we want to start to listen to in terms of whether or not this is actually really working for you. Because if it compromises your well-being, then I would absolutely say that it is absolutely not worth it. Yeah. And so it's something that's something else that we then need to upgrade. So, say for example, coming back to that health thing, I should never miss a workout. That might help in some ways, but what happens at times where you're sick or at times where you're depleted or, and that's not to say that's always a time not to exercise, but we want to start to be more flexible, to be able to tune in with what your needs are from moment to moment. And that might be a case where, we don't have to be so rigidly, we're not robots. We don't have to be rigidly driven by rules. They can be guides, and we can say, yep, this is my preference. They can be super strong preferences, but not necessarily rigid rules. So hopefully that makes sense. So what I'd ask you to do there is just when you're looking at those results, look at your external results and your internal results, because again, if you want these changes to be sustainable, then it all comes from you. Yeah. So for example, you're running a race and you're just going to run, so marathon, you're going to run a marathon and you might get to the end, but you're not going to have any water and you're not going to have any nuts and you're not going to have any little bits of chocolate or anything, and you're going to not listen to any encouragement from anybody else, right? So it's just going to be all you. Well, obviously that's not how people run marathons, right? So that's not how this works either. Yeah. So we want to make sure, yes, you can, run the kilometers, but you're also making sure you're getting nourishment along the way in whatever, obviously a metaphor, whatever nourishment that might actually be. So, and that's where we get to set up practices. Yeah. So if, yes, you're getting the results, but it's coming at a sacrifice to yourself, that's where we get to question what practices, what is it that you need to be able to support yourself most strongly around the results. So yes, we want external results and it for it to be aligned with those inner practices. So is it meditation? Is it journaling? Is it talking to somebody, working one-on-one with a coach? What is it for you? So really just being able to tune in with what that's going to be, that inner work, as it were. Okay. And so what do you stop? Oh, yeah. Okay. So when we look at those rules, what we're now going to be questioning is, as you've listed them out, I want you to be asking, what do they stop you from seeing? So coming back to that Monopoly story, Jade, if you didn't watch, obviously you just jumped on, so go back and watch it, because I think it's quite funny and it's quite telling about how our family operates too. When you look at your rules, right, so you've got this set of rules, we want to then start to question, when you operate from these rules, what do they stop you from seeing? What do they stop you from doing? Yeah, and do they stop you from feeling? Yeah, because say for example, I must, and I don't know why I'm just talking about that one, but I must exercise every single day. I should exercise every single day. What does that stop you from feeling? Well, maybe it stops you from feeling in flow. It stops you from feeling flexible. It stops you from feeling like you can trust yourself, and so it stops you from feeling like you've got a choice in the matter, and so it's like, okay, so that's really a way for it not to be sustainable for you. Yeah. And so really importantly, what we're going to ask then is, what do they stop you from seeing? So in terms of your life, yeah, thinking, feeling, doing. Yeah. And they can be good things, so maybe I'll only eat chocolate on the weekend or something, just pulled that one out, but I'll only have chocolate on the weekend. Okay, well that's reasonable, because it's a rule, yes, but, it means that it'll stop you from maybe eating chocolate every day if that's a habit, but it'll mean that you can have some on the weekend, and then there's that time where you can have it type thing. So I should only eat it on the weekend, or I will only eat it on the weekend. Well, that's something that it does stop you from doing something, but it also opens you up to doing something else as well, and there's some more flexibility in that. So we want to start to question, because again, coming back to the Monopoly game, what does it, when we follow those rules really rigidly, what does it stop you from seeing? Well, it stops you from seeing that through collaboration we can be successful. Collaboration and relationships. When you're, it's dog eat dog, that's a family saying, dog eat dog. It's like, well, actually, is that really the key to success? Is it really? Does it have to be? So, it stops you from seeing that there are other people here who are also trying to succeed, and how about we all try and succeed together? So when we have that rule, it's not in the game, as I said, but when you have that, or you choose to believe it, what does it stop you from seeing? So I'd like you just to question those as well. Okay, and then this is just an opening up here as well, and you'll be familiar with this because this is something I like to ask on repeat. So what if these rules were not the truth? Yeah, or what if these rules were not your truth? Yeah, because when we look at rules and where they come from, obviously, we absorb most of them. Yep, they are absorbed through family, through school, through society, through our culture. And oftentimes, they are there to, help society and families and schools and whatever function. Because when you're managing mass groups of people, we drive on the left, and that type of thing, if everybody just had to do whatever you like, obviously that's not really going to work, although that's how they operate in India. So drive wherever you like. So it seems to work. I don't know. But, so we've got these rules, right? And they're meant to allow societies to function, but do they help you to function? And where we can see, we can actually start to operate within our own way of being in the world, coming from our own truth. Yeah, that we can actually, as we start to break the rule, recognize the rules, this is where we get to start to break them. What if they weren't truth? Or what if they weren't your truth? And if you truly want to start to live your life by design, you really want to start to live outside of the box that you've been in, then breaking these rules or questioning them at the very least to see whether they work for you is absolutely it's a must. There's a rule. We must question our rules. Fantastic. That's a really helpful rule to have. So when we actually go, what if these rules weren't truth? what if these rules weren't your truth? You know, here we're starting to give you permission to open up to changing your model of the world. You know, if they're not truth, then so be it. You know, that you can begin to start to change them. Yep. So, so what if they're not your truth? They're just one way of looking at the world. Yeah. And we can then start to question them, and then we can start to really live life in a different way. Because, you know, when you look at society and you look at how 90%, you know, and probably even more, 98% of the population do live, you know, that's what we call it, outside of the box. You know, it's really probably only, and I'm probably being generous if I say 10%, but it's probably more like 2% of people who actually go, you know what, like, this doesn't work for me, you know. And so, you know, a good example of that is, say for Dean and I, where, you know, I entered into motherhood with without realizing it, with a whole bunch of expectations around what that should look like, what would make me a good mother, what would make me a good homemaker. And the reality is, like, a lot of that doesn't sit well with me because, I mean, firstly, it wasn't modelled to me. My mum was a worker, so it wasn't modelled to me. But deep within me, that doesn't resonate either, because I just so have a passion for my work. And so I had to sort of overcome all of these ideas about how that made me a bad mum. You know, a working mum's a bad mum, you know, like, and I knew I didn't believe it, but I felt it, you know, and that has a history in terms of being a latchkey kid, basically, you know. So, you know, that sense of being driven by these rules around how society operates, and then finding your way within that, yeah, that society operates in this way, and to be able to find your way within that, yeah, where you can make your own rules, you know. So I go, okay, well, actually, you know, a working mum's not a bad mum, you know, but this is how I can start to meet, you know, my needs in terms of my needs to do my work and meet the needs of my family, and to make sure that everybody is, you know, we have the mix of both. And so in doing that, there are a whole bunch of rules and expectations, and that got to be upgraded. And really that's what's been happening over the last 12 months or so, where now Dean and I do work symbiotically together to raise our family. And this is something that we have created because we questioned the rules around what that looked like, you know. So is it okay for Dean to come home and for me to work? Well, who says, you know, who says whether or not that's right? Well, we do, of course, you know. So, and that's wonderful, you know, that he wants to do that. It's wonderful that I want to do that because it works for us together as a family. Is it truth? Who knows? Is it our truth? Most definitely. Yeah. And so you get to decide. And the only way you really get to decide is when you start to question, you recognize the rules that you're playing by, and then you question them, and then you decide whether they are your truth, whether they fit for you. And that's the best thing really about being human, is that we get to adapt. You know, the most amazing thing about human beings is our capacity for innovation and adaptation. And so this is where we're actually using our most effective way of being human, you know. So it's not primal, but because it's our executive functions, but this is the capacity that we have as, just, you know, by virtue of being human, the capacity to innovate, to think, to plan, and to adapt, you know. So if that doesn't work, then absolutely it gets to be upgraded. Okay. So, all right, so then we're going into how else could you look at the situation. So we're wanting to upgrade those rules, yeah? So if we're saying, well, it doesn't really work, it's not really your truth, how else could you look at the situation? Yeah, so we're coming back to the domain, yeah, so for health, yeah, which is what I was talking about. You know, say, for example, exactly that about the chocolate, you know. So how else could I look at the situation? Well, actually, it's an okay thing, so I'll just have it on weekends, or I'll just have it, you know, Friday night, or, you know, whatever you want to do, where you create a new rule for yourself around that. Yeah. How else could you look at the situation? So exercise. Okay. So that we have a guideline. Yeah. So I exercise every day. And what we want to do, though, is to be able to make it a guideline. It's a strong preference, you know, that this is something that we commit to, and not because other things get in the way, like, oh, my children want me, or, you know, something came up, but that we're using our intuitive guidance around what is most aligned for you to do that day. Yep. And so this is where, for me, like I've upgraded or expanded my exercise routine, where I actually have a range of things that I can draw on in any single day. And so, some days it's yoga, some days it's running, some days it's weights, some days it's a class, some days it's a walk. Yeah. And so just throwing all of that in there and saying, well, there's a range of different things, and even, when I go to the gym, what's most aligned? Like the other day, like I don't use the treadmill at the gym because I've got one at home. But the other day I was like, you know what, I really want to run. So I went and did use the treadmill at the gym, and I usually use their little sort of running machine because it's not as it's not high impact, but it's high intensity, and I really like it. And I don't have one of them at home. But this day I was just like, you know what, I'm going to use a treadmill. I don't care. Like, I got one at home, but I want to do it, so I'm going to do it. Yeah. And so when we look at, I'm going to exercise every day, we could upgrade that. How else could I look at the situation? Well, I'm going to trust my intuitive guidance to lead me to the body movement that is most aligned for me on that day. And that's exactly what I do. Yep. And so I hurt my arm. And so, I'm realizing now, okay, well that, I get to do other things around that, the things that don't aggravate that, which is annoying, but those soft tissue injuries just are so bothersome to try and fix, right? So you have to nurse them a little bit. And so, yes, that's a bit annoying, but I'm going with it and saying, okay, well, what's the body movement that's most aligned for me and my body today, right? And so therefore, moving from a rigid rule to one that is actually more fluid and flexible, and one that is likely to be more sustainable too. Yeah, because, it's sort of like, for me, when I was looking, expanding my awareness around exercise, and I bought the treadmill because it was too hot to run outside and I was really not liking it. So, I put the aircon on and run inside, which I really like. Not everybody's cup of tea. But I realised, I had this goal, run 5Ks 3 times a week. And I was just really resisting it and hating it. And I was just like, oh God, what is that? And so I was just like, righto, I'm not going to do running. I'm going to do yoga. And then after about 6 weeks, I was like, I really want to do a run. I was like, but you don't do running anymore. Like these are rigid rules, right? And then I was like, oh no, I'm going to do a run. And then I went and I ran, and I'd cut after not running for 6 weeks, I'd cut 7 minutes off my time. Like, I shit you not. I ran 5Ks in 28 minutes. I was like, what is that about? That's insane. And so, coming back to, this learning process, have the flexible rules where I'm going to do with what's most aligned for me on the day. I really wanted to do a run. I really obviously needed to do a run, and I was 7 minutes, and that was a PB. I'd never run 5Ks in 28 minutes before in my life. And, after 6 week break, and because I'd been doing all this yoga and I'd had rested my body and it was most aligned, out it came. I was like, holy shit, like I'm a gazelle. I'm not sure if anybody looking at me would have thought that, but that's how I felt, and I'm going with it. I was a gazelle. And so, this is just an encouragement to look at how else you could look at the situation, and to be able to then come up with rules that are more fluid, still in alignment, still within integrity, but to be able to recognise that they can be strong preferences, yeah, so that we can have them there, they're guides, and that we can be really intuitive with how we implement them in our life. Yep. And so, and this is just an encouragement, and I'll give you the rest of the questions just in the template, but what alternatives do you already know that are available? So I'm just encouraging you there, because when we start to look outside of the box, so when we've got rules and a model, we're looking at life like this, and this is how it is. But when we start to look outside of that, we go, well, actually, there are lots of alternatives. And so this is where, coming back to the exercise for me, what alternatives do I have? I was like, well, actually, I love them all. Like, I really, for me, part of my makeup is body movement. Like, I just not right without it, basically. And so realising that, it's multifaceted, I realised, well, actually, it's everything. It's everything. I need to do everything. And not that I need to do everything every day, and that it's not that I need to do heaps of it either. Like, I'm not going to go and be a yogi, and, I'm certainly not going to be a runner. But what I'm doing is having an exercise practice that supports me to do everything that I want to do. So, with my family and do my work and do my writing, and exercise supports me to do everything. Exercise is not my thing, that's not what I'm about, but exercise is my thing in my personal practice, right? So I don't have to be an expert yogi or an expert runner or an expert weightlifter. We've got people at our gym who are just amazing women who are doing these competitions, and they're just like, Nick was there the other day and she's up there and she's doing these I don't even know what she was doing. I can't even imagine it, but they were sort of like like knee ups, I guess, but they were like whole body leg up things. I was like, holy shit, how is she doing that? So I was like, okay, that's wonderful, and that's great, but she also works out for like 3 hours a day, and I'm like, she owns the gym, right? So if you want to be someone who focuses on exercise, then you buy a gym and you're just there all the time, and that's wonderful, but that's not my thing. So I don't have to have a model of the world that fits all that in. I just say, well, this is what it is for me. So coming back to your truth. So that's about it for today. But what I would encourage you to do, I'm going to put those all in a template for you, and I just encourage you to sit down and journal on those questions. Yeah, because what I want you to do with those initial ones, I expect that, and I should, that you just sit there and you work through those blank spots. Yeah, so you go, I expect that, blah. Well, that's it. Well, no, it isn't it, because this is so multifaceted that you go through 2 or 3 blank spots where you think, they're all the expectations that I have, push past that and really then keep going, because what you'll find is that there's always more. Yeah, and that's probably the deeper layers, the true rules that are getting in your way, or the true expectations that are getting in your way. And so I'd really encourage you to do that, and just take your time to do it as well. So this is again, it's a journaling practice. These are thinking prompts, and take your time with it and really do it justice, because this is where your game really starts to change. When we break the rules, we're recognizing what the rules are. You're seeing that the rules that no longer serve you, and then we're making our own rules. This is where you become an agent in your own life. You have agency, you have power. This is where you can become an empowered woman to go out there and do whatever it is that you need to do and want to do in the world on your terms, right? And this sometimes, if we're just trying to do that, operating from an old model, and, just back to an example with Dean and I and the life shift that we've made, I spent the last 6 months of last year really just focusing on all of my mindset stuff around family, life, motherhood. And it seriously was this massive purging where, and it was obviously coming out in my writing, but it was just this purging around all of these expectations and shoulds, and how what I had absorbed in terms of life, basically, and how that was going to be lived. And I was like, wow, that is so, it's torturous, it really is barbaric. I was like, wow, that is not how human beings function best. Like, where did that come from? And so it just gets to be upgraded. That's all, it just gets to be upgraded, and go, okay, that's barbaric. Well, that can be gone. Thank you. Don't need that, but we need a practice around it. And that's what this is. This gives you the power to excavate what your rules are, what's your model of the world, so that you can really start to play a very different game in your life. And that's my deep desire for you guys. So that's it for today. Really, really super excited for this piece, and I really would love to hear your feedback around how you go with it, because well, this is a game changer. It is an absolute game changer. So I really look forward to seeing how you go with it. So have an amazing day, and we'll talk to you very soon. And any questions, sing them out. Any successes or troubles that you want to share on the Facebook page, jump right in. Happy to do that. Others, no doubt, are happy to hear it and share and support too. No worries. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon. See ya.